Hey all, Pi here, and we are back in our life, beginnings and always. And, I have messed about with my sound a little bit, and it's a little bit too loud. There we go. Last time I kind of left it off at a choice between, taking turns driving and just being the distraction. And, I think I'm gonna go for you took shifts driving throughout the trip. The route was fairly straightforward, and you'd had enough practice with driving to feel comfortable doing so. When night eventually fell in a blanket of darkness, the drive finally came to an end. Cove pulled into the parking lot of Kyra's apartment building, the glow of the car lights disappearing as he turned off the engine and let out a heavy sigh.
Huh.
We made it. We're here. The two of you exchanged tired smiles, having successfully and safely completed one half of the trip. Woo! Long-ass trip, though. You were relieved to have actually arrived and eager to get out of the car and stretch your legs. You took the stairs up to the building together. After a knock, you were abruptly met by a flash of green hair as Kyra opened the door and immediately took her son in her arms. Aww. There he is, my gigantic baby boy. Aww. She never really changes, does she? She squeezed him for a moment and then pulled back so she could examine his face. Are you even taller than the last time I saw you? Cove gave you a look and rolled his eyes amusedly as she patted the tops of his shoulders proudly. You say that every time I'm here. It doesn't even make sense right now. My last visit wasn't that long ago. Kyra simply laughed before letting him go fully and ushering the two of you into her apartment. Then she turned to you, a wide grin pulling up her lips. Joy, it's so nice you came along with. And as a bonus, you've both arrived in one piece. Yeah, it's always the goal, isn't it? It's good to see you, Kyra. It's been too long. Kyra beamed at you both, and while you would have loved nothing more than to settle down and rest after the drive, you could see she wasn't going to let you go that easily. So how was the trip? I admit I was just a pinch worried. I think I'm gonna step back for this one. You let Cove answer that. It was fine. No problems for us. Kyra clapped her hands together, the bracelets around her wrist jingling. I'm so proud. I can hardly believe how mature you both are. Where did all those smarts come from? Cove ran a hand over his hair with an awkward chuckle.
I don't know.
Maybe I got some from my parents. Aw. His mom looked up at him deeply, her eyes glistening as she shook the sentimentality off with a wave of her hand. I love that. You have to be half asleep already, huh? I don't want to keep you up much longer. Early morning and a whoosies. How do you want to deal with the sleeping arrangement? I've only got my own room in Cove, so the living room couch isn't bad. Joy can use my bed. I'll sleep on the floor in the room. It doesn't matter for one night. Kyra laughed out loud, startling you both. You raised an eyebrow at her outburst, giving her a quizzical look. Oh yeah, you'll just stay on the floor. You couldn't handle that much back when you were 13 with both your parents in the room. Shh! Don't bring that back up! Cove blushed a dark red and gaped, completely unprepared for her to pull out that embarrassing moment from the past. Hey, it's fine. We cuddled and it was cute.
Hey!
Mom! I'm not gonna miss the chance to give him hell. Yep, she's right. That's totally what you'd do. Cove hung his head in defeated embarrassment while you and Kyra chuckled together. I'll take the floor. Cove shook his head, dismissing the idea immediately.
No.
You're the guest. I don't want to take your bed. Well, I still don't want to take it from you, and I said it first. The two of you narrowed your eyes at each other stubbornly. Kyra took that as her cue to step in. My house, my rules then, and you know who I have to side with. I'd like you to take the bed, Joy. You hesitated a moment, but it seemed you had to accept the hospitality. With a small sigh, you gave in. Alright. Cool.
So...
Would you be okay with me sleeping on the floor in the room? I'd rather be there than out in the open in the living room, even if there is the couch. Okay, so you all know I'm I'm keeping Cove as close as I possibly can. And I don't think I need to explain why I want to keep Cove as close as I possibly can. So I'm just not going to. Yeah, you can sleep there. Kyra giggled softly, drawing your attention back to her. All funny stuff aside, you need to get some sleep for tomorrow. Seems like you're setting yourselves up to not get any. I know that sounds really captious, but I'm a mom. I have to say these things. Come on, we're not little kids having a sleepover. We're responsible adults, right, Joy? Yes, very responsible. She gave the two of you a suspicious look and you stood up straighter, trying to prove your point. I'll leave it at that then, for now. Just remember that the walls are thin in this apartment. If you can't settle down and sleep, I might have to separate you. Oh no! No! Mom, please. We'll be good. Perfect. Kyra clasped her hands together, her bracelets softly tinkling against each other. It's only getting later, so I better let you prepare for bed. She nodded towards the hallway and gave you a small smile. I'll play hostess for a sec and show you where the bathroom is first, Joy, and where you'll be staying the night. Thank you. You hoisted your travel bag over your shoulder and followed behind Kyra and down the hallway. Cove shuffled along behind you, disappearing into the bedroom while his mom had you go to the restroom. The apartment was small, but nicely decorated in soft, cool colors, with plenty of artwork hanging on the walls to give it character. It was stylish and exactly what you would have expected from someone like Kyra. After being shown the bathroom and wishing Kyra a good night, you headed into the room and found Cove already there. He had changed into his sleepwear for tonight, as well as set aside his glasses already. Looking around, you found the bed to look much the same as the rest of the apartment, but with small ocean elements you were sure Cove must have enjoyed when he stayed here. Aww. All in all, the room was pretty and clean, though it almost looked like a hotel guest room rather than a bedroom. Cove only spent a few weeks out of the year there, so it made sense that it wasn't especially lived in.
So?
What do you think? It's pretty nice, huh? Mom always keeps it clean and everything, even when I'm not here. I mean, it's her house, so of course she keeps it clean. That's sweet of her. Yeah, she's good like that. He seemed pleased enough with the response and gave you a small smile before opening the zip on his bag. When you went back to the room, you jumped into the bed under the covers, just as Cove was shuffling into his sleeping bag on the floor. You waited until he was settled in before you flipped off the lights, and a soft glow from outside peeked through the blinds, casting a shadow over the floor. You closed your eyes, blocking everything out.
Night.
Night, Joy. Good night, sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite. That's cute. The room grew quiet as the two of you wound down for the night, and you found yourselves listening to the sounds of the city outside the window. The noise out there was so different to what you were used to back home. Cars zooming past and people out having fun instead of crashing waves and the ocean winds cocooning your house in their embrace. Yeah, that is something I have an unfortunate level of experience with since I've lived a couple different places. Like, every single place that you could possibly live has a different sound to it. Like, when I was living out in Georgia, the nights were filled with tree frog chirps. Like, they were loud tree frogs. So, like, whenever I moved to Texas, that was probably the weirdest thing, that there were no tree frogs. It took me a while before I really got used to it and was able to sleep like that. And then, of course, now I'm in a big city and a completely different sound palette again. But such is life. Cove shifted around in his sleeping bag, making the fabric crinkle loudly. I've outgrown this thing. I should have checked it earlier, but the trip was kind of short notice. Snuggles? Why don't we share? It's big enough. Cove inhaled deeply, the fabric of his sleeping bag crinkling loudly as he fidgeted beneath. Told my mom I was gonna stay on the floor. You frowned, wondering when that had ever stopped him before. Did you really plan on going through with that? His face says no.
I
No. I love you, Cove. You're so easy. He hesitated a little, the silence stretching between you. You couldn't help but smile to yourself. You knew him well. The sleeping bag rustled again, and through the dim light you saw him stand and head towards the bed. He took in a deep breath as he ran his hands across the top of the blanket, gathering his nerves as his eyes met yours. And then he paused, head tilted to the side, as if silently asking permission. Boy, get your ass in this bed, now! Well, what are you waiting for? You shuffled over to make room for him as he pulled the bedding up and crawled beneath the covers, leaving the two of you close together, but not quite touching. Aw. He exhaled a heavy breath as he lay down on his side, his head getting comfy on the pillow next to yours. You smiled softly through the dark, thinking that it felt good to have him so close. You felt better when he was around. He raised his fingers and delicately brushed the tips over your cheeks, drawing a shaky sigh from your lips. His touch was warm and feather-light, making you feel tingly all over. When his eyes met yours again, you found yourself lost in them, the world becoming still and silent around you. Then he froze, muscles tensing as he closed up like a clam and his breath hitched in his throat. Calm down! He attempted to whisper something, but it was completely lost on you. With that having to suffice as a warning, Cove jumped off the bed and crouched down on the floor, his head held in his hands as he took a few deep, stuttering breaths. Boy, calm your ass down. You bolted upright in the bed, staring down at him with a mixture of alarm and amusement. Are you okay?
I'm always like this.
I thought it'd feel like it did before when we were younger, but it's different now. I'm sorry, Joy, really sorry. I'm just so... He panted deeply in and out as though he had just finished running an entire marathon. After finally steadying his breathing to a normal rhythm, he crawled back into his sleeping bag and huddled down on the floor, his back turned to you. Aww! Sorry. It is times like this I must ask myself, what would Joy do? Because I know what I would do. And I feel like that is not the same thing that what Joy would do. And I'm a little bit torn between a couple of these. Like, I feel like they would understand. Like, the pieces would click together and be like, oh, that's what's going on. But I've also given them a little bit of an impishness to them. So I'm not sure if I should say they were disappointed, or amused, or flattered, or embarrassed. I am fully just like, I don't know what to do at this point. What is the most in character with Joy? I'm leaning towards this one. You were amused. That was Cove for you. He usually needed at least one trial run before he could take that kind of step forward. We can always try again another night. He made a small noise, acknowledging that he heard you, but said no more. With the event over, you laid back down in bed alone for this night. Aw. The next day dawned, bringing with it the sound of birds chirping happily outside the window. You opened your eyes slowly, letting them adjust to the light as you tried to recall where you were and remembering the unfamiliar sight of Cove's second bedroom. Now, personally, I am the type of person... Under normal circumstances, I will say this. Under normal circumstances, I pretty much wake up with the sun. Because I'm a morning person, I am just so ingrained in me not to sleep in. Like, my idea of sleeping in is still being in bed at 10 a.m. Like, that is really late for me. So, I'm thinking, you had woken up on your own. The early morning sun filtered through the blinds, telling you it was about time to get out of bed and start getting ready for the day. The sound of Cove shuffling around the room drew your attention, though. You weren't surprised. He had always been a morning person. Perfect! Sitting up in bed, you let out a yawn and stretched your arms above your head. Personal experience, sleeping in a bed that is not your own is always going to be less satisfying than sleeping in your own bed, so you still felt pretty groggy. You were used to sleeping in longer than this, and the late night hadn't helped. That is not what I was going for there, but that's okay. Morning. The two of you were on completely different wavelengths right now. You pulled yourself out of bed, grabbing a fresh change of clothes and your toiletries before heading to the bathroom. After all that, you met Cove back in his room. He was sitting on the floor when you entered, sorting through a bunch of stuff in a box, determining what to bring and what to leave behind. Hey.
Hey.
Can you pull out the stuff in those drawers? You nodded, though he hadn't even looked up from his task, so you knew he wouldn't have seen. Heading over to his drawers, you started the task of taking out various items and setting them on the ground in front of Cove. After a while, it became clear to you that Cove was acting strange whenever you went near him. He was flinching over your presence. Aww. It happened a few more times before you couldn't take the awkwardness any longer. You dropped the stuff you were holding down in front of him and raised a questioning eyebrow. Is everything okay?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I'm sorry about last night, again. He quietly squeaked the second part of his thought. About not staying in bed with you. Aww. I know you try not to mind or be mad at me, but I wish I didn't have to make you accept me backtracking all the time. He swallowed thickly, struggling to find the right words to explain himself. I do think it felt nice, really. Really. It's just also not bad, but good in an inconvenient way. Oh boy. That first love is a trip. You're just like, oh, so this is what everybody else experiences when they're going through puberty. Fuck! I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh. It's a very familiar pain.
I mean...
Laying together like that, being so close, it gets too hot, you know? Go on. His cheeks flushed with color and he immediately trailed off, his eyes firmly fixed on the floor. It was that intense for you, huh? Maybe I'm the one who should apologize. His eyes widened, a pink tinge creeping onto his cheeks before he could duck his head enough to hide it.
Well...
Don't worry about it. You don't need to do anything. Let's get back to packing. With it more or less solved, you went to grab some more items as Cove focused on the box in front of him once again. Oh hey, look at this. When you turned towards the sound of Cove's voice, you found him digging through one of the drawers beneath the bed.
Neat.
Here's something I definitely need to bring. Neat. Craning your head, you got a better glimpse of what he was holding. An old, yellowing book. When he opened it up, there were a few dried, pressed flowers between the pages. Those had been gifts you'd given him from his mom's place. Something for him to remember you by and to make his time here less lonely. Aw, he kept them the whole time. I was only lending you those. I think I'll take them back now, you joked. His eyes widened in alarm, but upon seeing the smile that was pulling on your lips, he chuckled softly. I think you should probably just continue lending them to me.
That's nice.
These are special. It was important having a piece of you with me when we were apart. I feel the same way. That's why I gave them to you. Cove smiled, pleased that the feeling was mutual, but then the expression became more amused. And did you keep the souvenirs I brought back? Nope, you said jokingly. He shook his head with a grin. Thanks. Another hour passed by in silence, and you were happy to see you were making a great progress with Cove's room, with only the closet left to sort through. You took a minute to take a mouthful of water from your bottle and perched on the edge of the bed, feeling productive. Cove glanced over at you and paused, putting down the tape gun he had been using to seal up his boxes. He raised an eyebrow. You know, it's really strange to see you sitting in this room. Why? He frowned a little, his eyes distant and his voice quiet when he spoke next.
That's...
During the visits to Mom's, when I was sitting alone in this room, I'd sometimes think about how you weren't here. It was a weird feeling at the time that you just weren't around, and now that you're here in this exact place, it's... I don't know how to explain the feeling. He shrugged it off and smiled a little, as though he'd said enough already and didn't want to risk sounding silly. Life is pretty confusing is all. I missed you so much when you were gone. His brows crinkled as he looked at you solemnly, his eyes bright with emotion. I missed you too, all the time. It made you feel better to know that somehow. To know that when you were stuck at home missing his company, that he was missing yours too. He looked away satisfied, heading over to the closet and the last of the items to be sorted. Before long, every box, closet, and drawer had been thoroughly combed through, with the items either neatly packed up in boxes or organized and returned to their proper place. With a sigh of relief, you glanced around the bedroom and the work you had done together.
All right.
We're done. Good job to us. I'm gonna change out of my PJs for the drive. You don't want to drive back down in your PJs? Quitter. Yeah. When the two of you headed out into the living room, ready to get everything finalized and hit the road, you found Kyra in the kitchen, pouring a cup of tea. Ooh, can I have one? I'm actually suffering from a tea shortage at the moment, please. Can I have your tea? Anyway. Cove headed towards her, leaning casually against the counter that divided the two spaces. Hey, you didn't have to get up so early.
Come on.
Are you crazy? Of course I have to see you off before you go. You can't sneak away while I'm out cold. Good mama. She beamed at him, and in all honesty seemed more than happy to be up and getting ready for the day. Do you want some breakfast? I've got some muesli? What is that? Does anybody know what that is? If you know what that is, please leave it in the comments. I am not going to remember to look it up by the time I'm done because I'm only 27 minutes into this session. I will not remember anything by the end. That's just how this goes. Anyway, I've got some muesli or eggs and toast. Oh, and some of that fruity cereal you used to love. Dude, it's been literal years since I could eat and enjoy cereal. These days, my stomach's just kinda fucked. Can't handle it. That's okay, we should really eat on the road. Kyra smiled sadly, a little disappointed, but she seemed to understand that your time was running thin. I thought you might say that. In that case, I've packed you some snacks for the road.
What do you think?
Even if you don't end up eating them, take it anyway, just in case. You can always feed them to Cliff when you get home, and tell him I said hi. Cove laughed and shook his head, knowing his dad would love nothing more than to polish off whatever food Kyra had prepared for you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mom. You really didn't have to. Thank you for the snacks. I'm sure they'll come in handy with this guy around. Cove scoffed and playfully rolled his eyes, earning a giggle from Kyra. I don't doubt it. Like father, like son. Cute. She returned your smile with one of her own before putting her cup of tea aside. Well, I'll help you get the car packed.
Sure.
Thanks. The three of you got a move on, taking the boxes from Cove's bedroom and heading down to fill the back seat of the car until there was barely an inch of space left in the back and trunk. With all of your helping, it only took a couple of trips to move everything, and you were done before you knew it. Then it was truly time to say goodbye. You convened back inside the apartment, where Kyra looked over the two of you with a quiet smile. It was great to see you both. Thank you for coming. She gave each of you a hug, and you felt a little sad that you hadn't been able to spend more time with her. It was good to see you too, Mom. Cove embraced her in return, the two of them holding on to each other for a few seconds longer. I'll miss you, but I'll visit again soon.
Of course.
You better. Hey, we should make plans for you to visit us too. I'll let you know when it's settled. I'd love that. Kyra bundled all the stuff she had prepared into a bag and handed them over to you. You took a quick peek at what she had packed. There was fruits, nuts, seeds, hard-boiled eggs, and some veggie sticks. Ooh. Oh no. I do love me some hard-boiled eggs, but they do not travel well.
Cool.
Oh, good to see we've got some fresh food options now. The snacks I brought weren't. Kyra shook her head at him and let out a soft laugh, as though she wouldn't have expected anything else. I seriously hope you're feeding yourself better than that at home. Yeah, of course, just not on trips. I can live with that then. She looked over at him fondly, her eyes at last focusing on his face and filling with emotion. I'm gonna miss you, baby. Aw.
Me too.
Thank you for letting us come. No problem at all. You're welcome anytime. Kyra put an arm around you both, pulling you in tight to her sides for one final squeeze.
Bye.
Have a safe trip. We will. With a last goodbye, you exited the apartment, though Cove hesitated for a moment in the door, his expression distant. You weren't sure what he was doing, though you tentatively took a step towards him. Everything okay? Your voice seemed to bring him back to earth, and he shook his head to clear his thoughts, his green hair swaying from side to side.
Come on.
Yeah, let's go. With that, the two of you headed back down to the car, ready to make the long trip home. Soon enough, you were on the wide open road with a car full of Cove's things and only one destination, Sunset Bird, California. Is Sunset Bird a real place in California? I have so many questions this episode. Go forth, my minions. Do research for me, please. The drive went as smoothly as could be expected, with the morning slowly creeping into midday as the miles flew by. After a while, you switched places with Cove and took over driving for a couple of hours. The day flew by in a whir of open road and sunshine, and before you knew it, it was early afternoon. By that point, you had already crossed the state line. Cove announced that he planned a little stop on the way home. He was quite pleased with himself as you arrived at the precipice. The Redwood National Park. Boy, we do not have time to stop here. Are we trying to get home? Shaded beneath a canopy of enormous redwood trees, you drove along. When Cove parked the car, you pushed the door to get out, and the first thing you did was look up. Enormous redwood trees surrounded you on all sides, their massive trunks shooting straight up into a canopy of foliage overhead. There were too many of them to count, stretching on and on as far as you could see. You squinted against the sunlight that was peeking through the leaves and dancing on the paths around you. It's great, right? He smiled at you from over the roof of the car before glancing around the place fondly. Remember the trip our families took here that one summer? It was cool going on a journey and seeing the forest in person, even if we didn't stay very long.
So...
And I guess we can stay for even less this time. But oh well. It just seemed like a good time to stop by. Who knows when we'll get another chance. His voice got a little softer at the end. It seemed to be bittersweet for him, being in a place he was so fond of, but not having time to appreciate it fully. You were pleased to have stopped there. It was a beautiful place to stretch your legs and take in some fresh air. There will be more chances in the future, I promise. Cove smiled, shoving his hands in his pockets and dipping his head. I'm gonna hold you to that. The two of you walked around for a while, completely dwarfed by the sheer scale of the redwoods. It kind of put your view of yourself and everything in a strange perspective. You took in a lungful of clean forest air, listening to the sounds of birdsong and the cool breeze rustling through the underbrush, taking advantage of the space to move around freely. However, you felt about being there, it was totally different scene than sitting in that old car for hours and hours. We're gonna be really lewd? And take Cove's hand. He intertwined his fingers through yours, smiling at you as he relaxed into your touch and rubbed the back of your hand softly with his thumb. Being here again, you couldn't help but reminisce on what else had happened during the trip you had taken here all that time ago. There were a lot of things that had reminded you of it recently. You looked over at Cove, who seemed to be lost in the peace of the place, and you wondered if any of it crossed his mind. Smiling at the sight, you thought back on what had been the highlight of that long-gone vacation. I am so torn between bringing up the anklet and bringing up the loft. You know what? No. We've already tortured the poor boy too much about sleeping arrangements. Let's torture him about his preference and jewelry. I haven't forgotten the classic anklet chat. That was a revelation. Cove scratched at his face awkwardly and sighed, seeming determined not to meet your eyes. Aww. I know you remember. I'm never gonna hear the end of it from you, am I? Not until the day you die. You gave him a light shrug. Do you still like them? I do. I think they're pretty sexy. Oh! He laughed quietly, the sound nervous and a little strained. He... Especially on you. Boy! The words left his lips and you froze, completely taken aback by the compliment. He blushed, but his gaze remained on you. Aww. You put a hand to your forehead, pretending to swoon. Cove chuckled at your dramatic response, shaking his head in amusement. Your spirits were light as you ambled past information boards and picnic areas. But before long, you decided it was time to bring this short stop to an end and head back to the car to get on the road again. Cove sighed when you finally reached the vehicle, jangling the keys in his hand before unlocking the doors.
Well...
I wish we didn't have to go, but we're going to be responsible and not stay longer than we should. Responsibility? What's that? Can I eat it? How grown up of you. He smiled slightly, and with that the two of you jumped into the car, buckled in, and he put it in drive. You were getting closer and closer to town as the sun started setting, though we're still far enough away that the radio stations were unfamiliar to you. Oh, hello. Cove twisted the dial and let me try that again. Fully flustered. Alright. Cove twisted the dial this way and that before stumbling into a channel with a song that he seemed to like. That was a rare gift from the fates in a sea of static, strange radio jockeys and grating tunes. Yeah... Fun fact, if you go traveling, like, outside of the range of the, like, radio stations in the major cities in Texas, you just... Nothing but country. Nothing but country. Awful. Anyway. His face immediately brightened at the sound of it, and he drummed his fingers along the bottom of the steering wheel happily. Sitting back in his seat, he bopped his head along in time to the tune. You sang along. Cove raised a pleased eyebrow at your vocalization. Emboldened by you, Cove decided to do a little lip syncing. Every now and then a part would be stumbled over, and by the end you were both laughing too much to continue. The song ended, and Cove reached over to start cycling through the radio stations again. Upon finding nothing tolerable, he flipped the dial off in defeat and leaned back in his seat with a sigh. Aww. You rested your head on your hand and stared out the window as the sky darkened, watching the landscape slowly melt into more familiar views. The miles went on, and an energy you had earlier was beginning to drain away. You imagined home and your family. You'd be there together soon. You know, I spent all these years living in Sunset Bird, taking a few weeks each summer visiting my mom in that second room. That's not gonna happen anymore, not really.
I mean...
I can still see my parents, but the way it all works between us has changed forever. He paused, the silence stretching. A serious look settled on his face, his thoughts far away. I feel the same about my parents, too. I know they'll always be there for me, but we don't really have the same relationship we used to. Cove's mouth pulled into a tight line, and he gave a small nod. You got the feeling that he understood how you felt. Cove stared straight ahead, down the long, long road. The path looked like it never ended. The path looked like it'd never end from where you were, but that wasn't true. Eventually, he found a few more words to say.
I'm so glad.
I think it's good we were able to do this trip without any parents or chaperones. It was just us. We did it all. I don't know, I feel a little more independent now. A little more ready for what's ahead. Right. It's like a real first step to be on our own all the time. It'll be here before we know it. The topic seemed to wear on Cove, and he made an attempt to find something else to speak on. So I'm kinda sad about getting back. I'm gonna miss having you right there tonight. Aw. He cleared his throat quietly, though said nothing more. You smiled to yourself a little at hearing him say something like that out loud. I'm gonna miss it too. And with the feelings confirmed as mutual, the two of you fell into a comfortable silence. The sky outside grew even darker as the hours passed by, the stars blinking on like tiny fireflies painted onto a canvas of blue. The scenery continued to transitioning between open roads, industrial areas, and beach towns, becoming increasingly recognizable as time went on. You felt somewhat disconnected from the world around you as you watched it through your window, your tired mind growing hazy. It was a strange, reflective feeling, but peaceful nonetheless. Soon enough, the world would return to you, and you'd find your feet firmly on the ground. It couldn't be helped. The adventure would end, life would continue, but your memories would linger on. Do I want to end the summer? Am I ready for this? This video is going to be really freaking short if I don't. And there's a very good chance I might end up having to break up the last bit anyway. Alright, here we go! Last summer's end! It's about to all be over! My body is not ready! And then the summer ended. Yes, I'm sure. Moths bounced against your window, attracted by the light of your room, a siren call in the slowly darkening sky. Just as the day was coming to an end, so too would summer. Liz would be moving back into the dorms before long. Luckily, Lee had been able to come stay for a short trip before her own new journey began. She had officially been accepted to her first choice college a few weeks ago. This was her last chance to see you all in person for... You flicked through the plans for the next few months, realizing that you didn't even know when you'd next have the opportunity for everyone to be in the same place again. It was hard to think that you'd likely be seeing even less of your cousin going forward, but you were delighted that she was pursuing her dreams. It's always bittersweet when people have to go away for college. While you were still with each other, your family was going to have dinner together. As ever, the Holdens were tagging along too. You were going to the Chinese restaurant. It was somewhere your family had always enjoyed going ever since you and Liz were tiny. The long-standing connection made it a fitting location for a final meal out before Liz and Lee set off again. Technically, you were getting ready to go out, though your mind was only half on the task. It was a pleasantly warm evening, the kind that epitomized the vacation feeling, and you were in no mood to spoil it by rushing around. You checked your phone, starting with a quick glance to confirm the time, followed by a speedy scroll through the latest updates. But what snagged your attention was the little envelope icon telling you that there was an email waiting. Your eyes widened as you reviewed the sender. It was about the work you'd applied for. Oh? You opened it instantly. You had to see what it was going to say, regardless of whether it was good or bad, as soon as you could. You clicked to open the message and waited for it to load, forgetting to breathe in the process. Your eyes darted over the message, rushing past the pleasantries to get to the heart of the matter. The blood pounding in your ears deafened you to the world outside that was contained within these letters. I think that's supposed to be the world outside what was contained within these letters? I think that's what was intended there? Anyway, your heart skidded to a halt as you read your verdict. You'd been offered the job. You were ecstatic. Bouncing on the balls of your feet, you pressed your phone to your chest as your excitement bubbled over. You wanted Cove to be the first to know. Wasting no time, you pulled up his number on your phone and rang your boyfriend. You pressed your phone to your ear, waiting impatiently for the dull ringing to be replaced with Cove's voice. It took a few rings, but you were in luck. Cove picked up the call. Hi, Joy. You blurted your news without the customary preamble of a greeting. Cove, I got the job!
Seriously?
What? You heard him gasp before continuing, openly gushing over your good fortune. That's amazing. It's incredible. You did it. Congratulations, Joy. There was another pause as you and Cove marveled over the announcement. No, seriously, this is really, really big, and you deserve it so much. I know it'll be good for you. Thanks. I just had to tell you right away, as soon as I knew. You heard Cove chuckle softly over the phone. Thanks, I appreciate it. You wanted to gush about the adventure lined up before you, a dream that you'd transformed into a plan, one that was soon to become your reality. But your hopes were temporarily dashed as Mom called up from downstairs.
Hey,
It's almost time to go. Joy, you ready? Oh. You covered your phone with your free hand and turned away from the device, not wanting to deafen Cove. The yell was intended to reach another floor of your house, not an ear that was virtually inches away. Coming! You brought your mouth back to the phone. I've gotta go. See you soon.
I mean...
Yeah, there's something I want to tell you too, but we can do that later. We're about to have dinner together. That piqued your curiosity, but you exchanged goodbyes and hung up. Hurriedly, you finished getting ready for the dinner, acutely aware that time was against you. Despite that, you didn't regret the time you'd spent on the phone. It had all been worth it to speak to Cove. Now you tell your family. You tore down the stairs, your feet barely touching the ground as you leapt from one step to the next. Your arrival, which compensated for excessive speed by creating a riot of noise, caught Mom's attention. Somebody's hungry. Her eyes were twinkling, amused, as she let you catch your breath. So, what's the rush for? It's not for food. I got the job. Mom whooped, holding out a hand for a high five.
You're fantastic.
Nice, Joy. The commotion had summoned the other women from various corners of the house. Liz looked up from her book, grinning, as Lee hurried over. Ma swept in from the side, wrapping an arm around your shoulder and squeezing you close.
Good job.
That's wonderful, sweetie. Hey, let me get in on the hug. She wrapped her arms around you both without waiting for an invitation. Liz, her book neatly abandoned on the floor, tapped her hands in applause as she walked up to you. Good job, Joy. Lee didn't hide her excitement, openly jumping for joy as she treated you to thunderous applause.
Seriously?
It's amazing. You're gonna be amazing. That's nice, but you shouldn't just stand there. Yeah, there's room for everyone. Your moms opened up the hug, both keeping an arm around you as they each held out another to invite Liz and Lee in. Giggling, Lee dove into the hug. Liz rolled her eyes, but allowed herself to be beckoned into the group hug. Your mom squeezed everyone together tightly. Mom's long hair was brushing against your face as she turned to check the clock.
Let's go.
We can take this party on the road. We've got to head out for dinner soon. Nodding, you were aware that your attempts to finish getting ready had been cast aside in favor of congratulating you. I have to do a couple things first. It won't take long. You hurried back upstairs. Though getting ready to go out was the issue at hand, you couldn't stop your thoughts from drifting back to the future. Your mind was buzzing over the news you'd received and everything that would soon unfurl. Everyone piled into the car. While it was marketed as being suitable to hold 5 people, in practice it made for a very tight fit. Yes, every time. Your mom, sitting in front, were fine. You, Liz, and Lee were squished into the back, Lee in the middle, wedged between you and your sister. So, in practice, the only time you can fit 5 bodies in a car like this is when at least one of those bodies is a child. Anyway. But Mom was an excellent timekeeper. Thanks to her efforts, you pulled up near the restaurant on time. The process of getting out of the car was slightly easier than squeezing into it, with much less coordination required to release the seatbelts than to secure them. You gave Lee a hand as she clambered out from the middle seat, then headed into the building as a group. A waiter greeted you as you entered. Ma let him know how many of you there would be in total, and he went to arrange a table that met your needs. He returned promptly to guide you to your seats. You perched comfortably in your chair, your head held aloft as if buoyed by today's good fortune. Your family settled down around you, and all cheerful and looking forward to the evening ahead. Your drinks order had just been taken when the Holdens came through the door. They were pointed in your direction, though with Mom waving an arm in the air, it was hardly necessary. Cove and Mr. Holden came to join you at the table. As greetings were being exchanged, Cove took a seat opposite to you. It had been left empty by unspoken acknowledgement that you and Cove would be wanting to sit together. Aww. Mr. Holden sat beside him.
Hi!
It's great to see you. Glad you can make it. Hello, everyone. You wouldn't believe how hungry I am.
I see.
You came to the right place, then. There was some laughter, though Liz groaned playfully, shaking her head at Mom's sense of humor. Growing up, she'd have complained, and Mom would have responded by making another comment. Liz had mellowed out over the years, but she still made a show of despairing at Mom's jokes. Her reaction to them had become a joke in its own right. That's how it be. Menus were soon passed around, and temporary hush fell over the table as everyone read. It didn't last long, punctured by comments about what people had eaten here before, and light chatter about what people were considering tonight. Once the waiter had disappeared with your orders, Cliff piped up.
Okay.
So I've got some good news. Kyra's making a trip out here tomorrow. Cove nodded, turning from his father to the rest of the table. Yeah, we talked about it and figured this was a good time for everyone.
Very nice.
That's great. Everyone reacted positively to the news, though Ma looked wistful.
That's a shame.
If only we'd known. Here we are having a big meal without her. If we'd waited one day, she could have joined us. Mom patted Ma on the back, gently nudging her from the realm of possibilities and what-ifs, and back to the evening that was going so well. Chin up. Lee and Liz will still be here tomorrow. We'll just have to throw another get-together and keep the fun train chugging along. Ma smiled warmly, taking Mom's hand in hers. Aw. That's true. There's plenty to celebrate right now, but there will be more good news and good times on the horizon.
Right.
Speaking of, that's not all we've got either. Mr. Holden's eyes were alight as he sat up straight in his chair, face angled towards his son. He barely let a beat go before nudging Cove with his elbow, pushing him to follow up on the announcement. He was the very picture of a proud papa. Aw. Cove shied from the limelight, ducking his head down and staring at his lap as he spoke.
Well,
It's just, I switched over to working full-time instead of only part-time. Plus, I've been looking at apartments. There's a few I can choose from. He flicked his gaze up at everyone around the table, a smile creeping over his face. I'll be pretty busy going forward. Apartments. He was moving. Cove was going to move out of his dad's house. After 10 years, he wasn't going to be your neighbor anymore. Mr. Holden gripped one of Cove's shoulders and gave it a loving shake. His excitement couldn't be contained. Incredible. Cove's actually going to make it to adulthood. It's a miracle. I succeeded! I didn't kill him! I love that dad energy. Mr. Holden leaned back in his chair, staring up at the ceiling in mock wonder.
I'm so glad.
I wasn't convinced I'd be able to rear a kid all the way to this point, but thankfully I've lucked out and got the best boy a dad could ever ask for. Aw. Dad. Cove blinkered his vision with his hands on the side of his face, temporarily blocking his father from sight. Despite his genuine bashfulness, which left him unable to meet anyone's eyes after all the attention thrust his way, he was happy.
thanks.
I was really lucky, too. You're a good dad. Aww.
Aw.
Come here. Mr. Holden threw an arm around Cove's neck, pulling him into as close of a hug as the seating allowed. He rubbed his cheek on the top of his son's head while Cove chuckled, accepting the affection with good humor. Ma leaned over and whispered in your ear, her fingertips brushing against your cheeks. Would you like to tell Cove and Mr. Holden what you told us earlier? Technically, Mr. Holden was the only one who didn't actually know at this point, but your ma didn't find out about your call with Cove. Sure. You tapped on your glass with a fork, something that you'd seen done in movies when people wanted attention. It didn't make quite the same noise, possibly because your glass was a tumbler and not a champagne flute, but everyone looked in your direction anyway. I've got something to announce too. Of course. I just heard that I got a job. I'll be starting soon. Mr. Holden gave you a thumbs up.
Good kid.
Impressive. You're a good kid. The world's your oyster. Cove grinned at you from across the table. He was still very pleased for you despite not being the first time you'd heard about it. You looked around at the faces of the company here. You'd been on this journey with everyone here for years, seen them falter and grow, and they had watched you go through the same. Cove was leaving his family home. Liz was heading back to college while Lee was starting at hers. You were staying close, but it was clear you were all heading in different directions, to different destinations. Some near, some far, but it wouldn't be long until you're all going your own way. And I think I'm going to cut it there, because I suspect that this outro bit will be long enough that I'll have to chop it up into multiple segments anyway, and this seems like a good enough place to cut it. I have so many emotions. So many right now. I am like, it makes me happy that they're growing up and they're getting big and mature and they're going to find themselves in the world, but also like it's sad because I want more. I don't want to lose them. My babies. But anyway, thank you guys so much for putting up with my shenanigans and my over-emotional ass. And I hope to see you again in the next one, which might be the last one. We'll see. I don't know.